Hello Year 10, Mr. Angier here. I hope you're safe and well. What are the features of the river's lower course is the learning for this week. Just as a reminder, any questions and work needs to go to your usual classroom teacher. Describe the features of the lower course of the river. That's the first thing that we want you to be able to do. You need to be able to say what you're likely to find in the lower course and then explain the processes, how, what, where, when, who, why is happening down there in the lower course. Now, first task. Last week we were looking at the middle course of the river. I'd like you to pause the PowerPoint and write down as many things as you remember about the upper and middle courses. So, for the first time, you're not just writing a list of the features and the behaviour of the river, the processes in the river. You are also now able to start talking about the differences between the upper and the middle course and why those differences are beginning to occur. Give yourself 3 minutes. I'll see you in there. Okay, welcome back, and hopefully you got lots written down, but if you didn't, don't worry. Remember, the upper course of the river is where we find the source. It's where we find the steepest gradient. We find a small river which erodes vertically. By the time we get into the middle course, we find a wider river. We see that it's beginning to erode laterally. We also see that the river is beginning to meander, and we might see the odd oxbow lake in there as well. And we also find that the land is beginning to flatten out. The gradient is less extreme. And this week we're going to look at the lower course of the river. Now, lots of the features that you're going to see in the lower course of the river are actually transferable to the middle course of the river as well. So we've talked about the floodplain already, and certainly flooding continues to happen in the lower course of the river. We've talked about an oxbow lake, which they've got in this diagram down here in the lower course. We also find them in the in the middle course as well. Tributaries are found certainly in both courses. Really, the thing that we're going to focus on now, which are unique to the lower course, is this area here, the mouth, and we're also going to talk about one of these things, deltas. So I thought at this point it would be good just to demonstrate through a photograph the difference between what the river was over here and what it's become over here. Now, there's one thing one common misconception that I just want to tackle at this stage, because when I was your age, I thought that because the gradient was steep, because the land was very steep at this stage, I thought that the river would be moving at its fastest in the upper course. Now, that's actually not the case, and what I want you to do is consider throwing a stick into the river up here. Okay, so the stick would be getting caught on these rocks. It would be getting pushed to the bottom of this plunge pool down here for this small waterfall. It would be, again, it's got to get its way through, it's got to make its way through this very thin area here. It would be eddying, which means it's getting rolled around, it's getting pushed backwards as well as forwards, it's going up and down. It's going a lot of directions other than the direction that it would be going, which is downstream. Now throw the same stick into the river down here and it very efficiently makes its way out towards the sea. And that's the difference. So when I say that discharge is greatest in the lower course, I'm talking about the fact that the river is draining the most amount of water. Even though it's the flattest land, the water is being drained more efficiently, more rapidly here in this flatter lower course than it is in the upper course. The water works in exactly the same way as the stick that you would throw in to this river. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the difference between the middle course and the lower course, because I've said to you that the river is beginning to erode laterally in the middle course, and it's widening and it's deepening, and that's certainly true, and that continues into the lower course. However, what you will also find is right by the mouth of the river, so just at this point here, before we go out to sea, the river actually does something quite unique, and all of a sudden the river becomes very, very wide. So it's absolute at its widest, right? So that's the mouth of the river, or sometimes an estuary. So it's very, very wide, but it also becomes much shallower. So if you look at the depth of the river here and compare it to the depth of the river in the middle course, sometimes it's actually shallower. And that does a very important thing, because there is now more riverbed to water ratio. You're getting more friction. And when you get more friction in a river, the water slows down. And when the water slows down, the carrying capacity drops. So the level of the amount of transportation that we had been getting drops. And that material that was transported is deposited. So all of a sudden we've got lots of deposition happening because of a slower river right at the mouth. So we're just talking about the mouth here, right? So to be absolutely clear about that, this is just happening right as a river is about to enter the sea. Now, as a quick recap for the processes, last week we were looking at transportation, so I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to write down all of the 4 ways in which a river transports material. Naming them is good, explaining them is even better. Welcome back. So give yourself a tick or a correction as required. Traction, first of all, these big boulders are moved through the power of the water downstream. Simple as that. Suspension. This material is very, very small, and it's suspended within the flow of the river. So if you were to go out into the River Thames and stick your hand in and pull your hand out again, you might find that you've got little bits of mud and sand and silt on your hand. Well, that material is the suspended material which is being moved by the river. Solution just means the chemicals which are in the water being moved down to or down through the river itself. So these chemicals, which are also doing the job of eroding, as we talked about in earlier PowerPoints, they are also moved. And then saltation is simply smaller pebbles and stones skipping along the riverbed in exactly the same way as traction, but we're just talking about smaller material here. So what does all of this transported material look like once it's deposited in the lower course? So we know now that we're getting a lot of deposition occurring in the lower course, and we know why. We can begin to explain why this is the case. It's due to the added friction, and it's due to the loss of carrying capacity of the river. So again, at this stage, if you want to pause the video and read all of this material, please feel free. But all I'm going to say is deltas, these are deltas here, deltas are just areas of land which are created when the river transports material and drops it at the mouth. But perhaps one of the best examples of this is the River Nile. Now you can see this is Egypt, so this is not an accurate map by any stretch of the imagination, but Egypt looks a little something like that. And you can see that the River Nile is makes its way through this really barren sort of desert area here, doesn't it? And you can see the impact that it has. The flooding on the Nile really fertilizes the land, and it makes for a very, very positive agricultural climate, and it means that people can live and feed themselves. Now we've got Cairo about here, but this area here is essentially the Nile Delta. So this is a very, very fertile patch of land. It means that Egypt can support a population of approaching 100 million people, and the water is eventually moving out into the Mediterranean Sea here. And here is again just another diagram of it to make it a little bit clearer. This is what it looks like on a map, and you can really see how big an area a delta can be. All it is the dropping off of material due to the fact that the river is wider, it's moving a little bit more slowly, and its carrying capacity is lost. So by now, hopefully, you can describe the features of the lower course of the river. You can say what a delta is. You can talk about some of these processes as well, and you can say why deltas occur. You can say why the river is at its widest. You can say why the river drops material and causes the deltas to shape in the first place. However, again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in contact with your class teacher. Thank you very much. Stay safe and see you next time.